Okay, welcome back to all of you guys. Welcome back from your break. Hopefully you had a chance to talk with each other, get to know each other a little bit, and maybe get some snacks and maybe stretch your legs a little bit, use the restroom. I'm going to start now with sharing with you enlightenment. What is enlightenment? So that you understand what this mental state is and what the goal of the path to enlightenment is, because the more you understand what the goal is, the more readily you can navigate your way to it. And you'll know that you've gotten there once you've actually attained enlightenment. So as we go, I'm going to stop at different times. I'm going to be stopping multiple times during our talk to give you guys a chance to ask questions that you like. Here at the temple or online, you guys are all welcome to ask your questions. So the first thing to share as it relates to this topic about enlightenment is to help you understand that it's a challenge for the unenlightened mind to understand what enlightenment is, because you've never actually experienced it before. I'm going to share with you plenty about what enlightenment is, and by the time we're done talking today, you're going to know more about enlightenment after we talk than you do right now. But just understand, you're not going to know everything there is to know about enlightenment in our little talk right here. It's kind of like, would you be able to experience chocolate ice cream if you've never tasted chocolate ice cream? Or would you know what chocolate ice cream tastes like if you never actually tasted it? The answer is no. You're not going to fully know what chocolate ice cream tastes like until you actually taste it. Someone can describe it to you, someone can tell you all about it, but you're not going to fully understand it until you taste it. So I'm going to describe to you what enlightenment is in detail, showing you a lot of details, but just understand that it's a challenge for you to understand it, and you're not going to fully understand it until you're making your way to it and you're actually experiencing it itself. Okay, so it's extremely challenging for an unenlightened mind to fully understand it. It takes time to fully understand. As one evolves closer and closer to enlightenment, they'll understand it. It's the ultimate goal of the teachings of the Buddha. And as we go, feel free to ask any and all questions that you like. So what is enlightenment? Enlightenment is a mental state that you attain in this life or at death. You can attain enlightenment at death too. The ultimate goal would be to attain enlightenment during your life, because then you get to experience the rest of your life with the peace, the calm, the serenity, the contentedness, and the joy. You get to have a life that is at ease. If you attain enlightenment at death, okay, that's the next best thing. At least you're not going to experience rebirth, coming back into the world. But the ultimate goal would be to apply the work and the effort so that you can get to enlightenment during your life and experience that peace and joy for the rest of your life. So by the time you get to enlightenment, the mind's going to be peaceful, calm, serene, and content with joy permanently. You're never again going to experience any discontent feelings. It's physically impossible for an enlightened being to become angry or irritated or annoyed or frustrated. It's physically impossible because you've uprooted the causes and conditions that are producing those discontent feelings. You will have eliminated 100% of all discontentedness. That list of discontent feelings that I share: sadness, anger, frustration, irritation, annoyance, guilt, shame, fear, boredom, loneliness, shyness, resentment, jealousy, stress, anxiety, resentment, bitterness, hostility, animosity. Even the slightest displeasure is eliminated from the enlightened mind. You don't even feel icky anymore. There's multiple benefits that I'm going to explain here in a moment. The mind's going to be concentrated, it's going to be steady, it's going to be unshakable. Having attained enlightenment, not only are you experiencing that enlightened mental state in this life, but you won't experience rebirth, coming back into the world again and again and again. You'll no longer experience a new existence. The mind will be calm and relaxed, yet attentive and alert. Sometimes when we think about calm, relaxed, we feel like veg, right? Like you're vegetating or something, or you're kind of like just completely like a zombie. That's not what enlightenment is. You're calm, the mind's relaxed, but yet it's attentive, it's alert, it's crisp. It's attentive and alert, right? You're focused, you have concentration, because your mind's now performing optimally. And you can attain this at death as well, either during life or at death. The way that you attain enlightenment is you eliminate what's called craving, anger, and ignorance. I'm going to teach you this on Wednesday morning. This is called the 3 poisons or the 3 unwholesome roots. This is a high-level description of the pollutions in the mind. I'm going to explain to you what they are. I'm going to explain to you the symptoms that you experience as a result of these so that you can independently verify that you have craving, anger, and this ignorance or this unknowing of true reality. And I'm going to teach you how to eliminate it and eradicate it from the mind. You're also doing what we refer to as realizing non-self and dissolving the ego. You'll understand more about what those are as you learn in the course. You're going to be practicing what we refer to as the wholesome roots of generosity, loving kindness, and wisdom. And you'll understand what that is when I teach you on Wednesday as well. The path to enlightenment is a purification of the mind, where you're purifying the mind through training it, eliminating the causes and conditions that are keeping the mind in the unenlightened state. There are certain causes and conditions, certain pollutions that are in the mind. So this path to enlightenment is to train the mind to purify the mind and get those pollutions out of the mind. And having done so, the mind will perform more optimally. You're going to notice significant benefits as a result. I like to share with people that enlightenment is not happiness or ultimate bliss. An enlightened mind is going to be happy. There's unconditional happiness, though, rather than conditional happiness. When you're moving towards enlightenment, there's 4 stages of enlightenment that the mind goes through, and I'm going to teach it to you here in a moment. But prior to getting to the first stage of enlightenment, there's something called the jhanas. The jhanas are preliminary phases that the mind goes through. If the word jhana translated to one English word, I would just use that word because it would be much easier. But that word doesn't translate to just one English word, so I still need to use the Pali word. What a jhana is it translates to meditative absorption or mental absorption. This is where the mind has absorbed a certain amount of the teachings and a certain amount of meditation, and now you're experiencing heightened qualities of mind that you experience all through your day. These are preliminary phases that the mind goes through. It's kind of like an indication to you that you're putting together the teachings of the Buddha, because you start noticing this real significant improvement to the condition of the mind before you move into the first stage of enlightenment and into the other stages of enlightenment. So when you get into the first stage of enlightenment, your mind is going to have a significant reduction of discontentedness. And by the time you get to enlightenment itself, your mind's going to be free of discontentedness 100%. When you move into these jhanas, your mind is still experiencing discontentedness, but you're experiencing heightened qualities of awareness and other qualities as well. And one of the things that you might notice when you move into the first jhana is you experience this bliss. Your mind is really delighted. You can be really excited, where you notice this significant improvement to the condition of the mind. And the Buddha refers to this as, filled with excitement and joy, that the mind is filled with excitement and joy. Some people refer to it as ultimate bliss. Well, there's some people in the world who are experiencing the jhanas, and they think that they're enlightened. So when they're describing what enlightenment is, they will say that enlightenment is ultimate bliss. And these same people will say that enlightenment, that as an enlightened being, you still get angry and you still get frustrated, which is not true. You don't get angry, you don't get frustrated, or any of those other discontent feelings by the time you get to enlightenment. So when people are experiencing the jhanas, they're experiencing that ultimate bliss, they're still getting irritated or annoyed, they're thinking that they're enlightened, so they're describing those jhanas as enlightenment. So you'll hear some people that will refer to as enlightenment as this ultimate happiness, this ultimate bliss, this period of time that they're experiencing, and they'll even say that an enlightened being still gets angry and still gets irritated. But that's just because they're misunderstanding. They're not realizing that they're not yet enlightened. They're just experiencing the jhanas. So I don't describe enlightenment as ultimate bliss, because it doesn't describe enlightenment. Enlightenment, you have happiness, you have joy. This is unconditioned happiness. You're always joyful, you're always happy, but it's not this ultimate bliss where you're like bouncing off the ceiling, right? This is what you can experience when you move into the first jhana. So I describe enlightenment in this way, that the mind is peaceful, calm, serene, and content with joy, that the mind has this unconditioned happiness. You're enjoying all aspects of life, despite what's going on in the world. Even if there's a war, even if your mother dies, you can maintain your joy. You're not joyful because your mother died. You're joyful despite that she's died, that you understand that she's impermanent and that she can't live permanently. But in the unenlightened state, you won't be able to do that. You'll be sorrowful and sad. And you're not a bad person. You haven't done anything wrong. It's just that the mind's untrained. So by the time you get to enlightenment, you can even experience the death of your mother, and you'll notice that the mind can maintain its joy and its peace. It won't be shaken up by that. And that's not the love that's causing the mind to be shaken up when mom dies. Oftentimes people think that it's love that's causing the mind to be shaken up when mom dies, but it's actually not love. You're going to learn about this as I teach you in the course. Okay, so this is a bit about what enlightenment is. The advantages of enlightenment is that the mind's peaceful, calm, serene, and content with joy permanently. If you think through your life of all the times you've ever been sad or irritated or annoyed or frustrated or disappointed or resentful, it takes a lot of energy. It takes a lot of time to maintain those feelings. It's so miserable sometimes. By the time you get to enlightenment, it's like getting all this time back in your life because your mind's just peaceful and joyful for the rest of your life. You're no longer experiencing that bitterness and hostility and aggression and all those other discontent feelings. You don't have to sit around and be exhausted from these feelings that are plaguing the mind. You'll have this high degree of focus, concentration, deep memory, and clarity of mind because you've eliminated the pollutions in the mind that are hindering it from being able to experience this enlightened mental state. So when you eradicate those pollutions out of the mind, not only is the mind going to be peaceful and joyful, but you'll experience these heightened qualities of focus, concentration, clarity of mind, and deep memory. You'll notice that you eliminate all these discontent feelings, this whole list of the ones that I will typically share. You'll notice that you have deep wisdom and that you're able to be polite, kind, friendly, and respectful to everybody in the world. Right now, you might find that to be hard. There's probably certain people in your life that you have bitterness towards, that you have a difficult time being polite and respectful to them. But by the time you get to enlightenment, your mind will have been fully trained and you will have eradicated your pollutions of mind. You'll be able to be polite, kind, friendly, respectful to everybody, no matter who it is. Even if you disagree with the things that they're doing in the world and you disagree with certain decisions that they're making, you'll still be able to be polite, kind, friendly, and respectful. Right now, you might find that to be challenging, but by the time you get to enlightenment, you'll be able to do that. You won't be causing harm in the world through your intentions, your speech, and your actions. You'll have cleaned all that up. You'll notice that your personal and professional relationships will really blossom, that you won't have the bitterness and hostility in your relationships anymore, and all your relationships will be at ease. So these are some of the advantages of getting to enlightenment. The way that you get to enlightenment is you need to learn and implement these core central teachings of the Buddha. And I'm going to be essentially teaching you all of these in this particular course. You won't be able to master them within the 5 days, but you'll at least have exposure to them and have learned them. Is the 3 universal truths, the 4 noble truths, and the Eightfold Path. I'm going to teach you that tomorrow. The 5 precepts, I'm going to teach you on Wednesday. The Brahma Viharas, I don't teach them specifically in this course, but I reference them at a certain point in the course. The 10 fetters, you're about to see those here in a minute. I'm going to expose you to those. The 7 factors of enlightenment, that's something that you can learn as well, that I teach in the various programs. And then extensive meditation training. This is where you're learning, you're reflecting, and you're practicing the teachings. And these are the core central teachings. There's other teachings besides this that you would need to learn. And that's why I have the various programs, the various courses and retreats and things like that. But this is the core central teachings that you're getting from a course like this to really get started on the path to enlightenment. Okay, everything that the Buddha taught in one way or another is helping you to eliminate what's referred to as the 10 fetters. The 10 fetters is the deepest detail of pollutions that the Buddha describes in the mind. When you learn the 4 noble truths tomorrow, you're going to get kind of a window into the unenlightened mind. You're going to understand the unenlightened mind and why it's experiencing the feelings it's experiencing to a certain level of detail. Then on Wednesday, I'm going to teach you the 3 poisons or the 3 unwholesome roots, which takes it down to another level of detail. It's still a high level description, but it takes you to another level of detail deeper than the 4 noble truths. But then below that is even a deeper level of detail called the 10 fetters. Every single thing the Buddha is teaching you and guiding you to understand is helping you to eliminate and eradicate these 10 fetters from the mind. These 10 fetters is what's keeping the mind in the unenlightened state. It's called a fetter because during ancient times, they would attach a fetter to your leg in order to keep you trapped as a prisoner. They didn't put you in jail cells necessarily. What they would do is they put a shackle around your ankle. They would have a chain, and then they'd have a big ball. and this would keep you confined to a certain area as a prisoner. Well, the Buddha referred to these 10 fetters, or these 10 pollutions or taints, these defilements, as a fetter because it's keeping you trapped in this unenlightened state, in this constant cycle of rebirth, where you're experiencing discontent feelings over and over and over again. So all of his teachings in one way or another are guiding you to eliminate these 10 fetters. And as you're learning, your mind is uprooting these out of the mind, and that's where you're seeing more and more peace, more and more joy, more concentration, more focus, because the mind isn't polluted. As you're first learning the teachings of the Buddha, you're focused on things like the 3 universal truths, the 4 noble truths, the Eightfold Path, the 5 precepts, meditation training. That's what I'm going to be teaching you. But all of that stuff is helping you to eliminate these 10 fetters, even though I'm not specifically sharing that with you. Just understand that this is what's at the root of it all. Once you start moving into the jhanas, those preliminary phases that the mind experiences, that's where you start focusing on the 10 fetters more closely. So when you're first getting started, you're just kind of getting your arms around the core central teachings. But then as you start noticing the improved qualities of mind of the jhanas, you start pivoting your practice and you start focusing more closely on the 10 fetters. And I'm going to introduce you to these fetters here just a little bit to help you understand these. The first fetter is called personal existence view. I'm going to be describing this to you tomorrow, and I'm going to be teaching you how to eliminate this tomorrow, just a little bit, kind of introducing it to you tomorrow. But just generally, what this is this is where the mind is clinging to your self-image or your self-identity, thinking that this is who you are. And because of this, your mind is easily getting shaken up. If somebody says something complimentary about your self-image, they might say, "Oh, you look so handsome in that shirt. It really brings out the colors of your eyes." Or, "Oh, wow, those earrings make your face look so beautiful." You might get these pleasant feelings based on the condition of somebody complimenting you in this self-image. But then it's only a matter of time before somebody says something negative or degrading or disparaging about this self-image. And when they do, you're going to experience anger and sadness and frustration because they're talking negatively about this body. But you can't control what other people do. You can't control what they say. So as long as your mind's clinging to this self-image, thinking this is who you are, this body, then your mind's going to be easily shaken up. And there's also a self-identity that the mind is typically clinging to, like your culture, your ethnicity, maybe your sexual orientation, maybe your nationality, maybe your job or occupation, and you're clinging to this as who you are. So if I was clinging to I am American and my mind identified with I am American, well, when somebody says something positive about American people, you would be like, "Ah, yeah, that's me. I'm American. Ah, look at me. Aha." You get all these pleasant feelings. But now if you're at a restaurant and 2 tables over, somebody's degrading your nationality or your culture, your ethnicity, you'd be angry. You'd be frustrated. But what the Buddha teaches you is how to eradicate this from the mind so that you don't cling to this body or this mind or this self-image or this self-identity, thinking that this is who you are. And then you can be liberated from those feelings that if somebody says you look handsome or beautiful, okay, thank you very much. That's very kind of you. Somebody says, you look horrible, you're so disgusting or whatever. Okay, be well, take care, right? This doesn't affect you. Your mind's not shaken up by it. But if you're clinging to your identity and you hear people talk about, the nationality that you are, or your culture, your ethnicity, or your job, or your occupation, if you identify with I am a police officer, and now people say something positive or negative about police officers, you're going to be shaken up by that. So you can eradicate this from the mind and gain your stability and calmness and steadiness in the mind. The second fetter is called doubt. What doubt is where you have doubt about the Buddha, the teachings, the community, your teacher, or your own ability to get to enlightenment. And when someone first comes to the path, they will have doubt. And you might have doubt for a period of time where you doubt whether this person actually lived. Do his teachings truly lead to enlightenment? Can this community of people that you're part of really help you? Can your teacher really help you get to enlightenment? Or you might doubt your own ability. Can you get to enlightenment? Do you have the ability to get to enlightenment? So the way that you eliminate doubt is you don't eliminate doubt through belief or faith. The way you eliminate doubt is through investigating the teachings, through examining them, through learning them. And then you reflect on those teachings to independently verify them. And then you practice them. And as you're practicing them and you start seeing the improvement to the condition of your mind, you'll get to a point where you're not enlightened yet, but you will have seen so much progress in the condition of your mind and in your life that you'll have no doubt about these teachings. You will know these teachings are leading to an improved condition of mind and an improved condition of life. And it's only a matter of time, if you stay diligent and dedicated to learning, that you'll get to enlightenment. So you may have doubt right now. That's very normal. What I encourage you to do is don't try to eliminate your doubt through faith or belief, but through investigating the teachings. You can harness this doubt in a positive way. I had a lot of doubt when I first came to the path to enlightenment, but I harnessed it. I turned it into an inquisitive mind. I was like, you know what? I do doubt these teachings. I don't know whether the Buddha lived or not. I doubt them 100%. Yeah, I doubt them. But then I rolled up the sleeves and I sunk my teeth into the teachings and I investigated them to try to see if they really truly work or not. And what I discovered is, yes, they indeed work. And I don't have any doubts about the teachings of the Buddha whatsoever. I know that they 100% lead exactly where he said they do. But you need to be able to get to that point through investigating the teachings. That's how you eliminate your doubt. So slowly but surely over time, you'll get to the point where you eliminate any doubt. Then the third one is called wrong behavior and observances. What wrong behavior is, this is where one is having certain moral conduct in the world. And as you're putting out that moral conduct, you're making unwise decisions without even necessarily realizing that. And then there's these unwholesome results that are coming back to you. So the Buddha doesn't teach rules or commandments. He doesn't try to force you to do anything particular. He's showing you the cause and effect, or the action and result. You're going to learn the moral conduct tomorrow in the Eightfold Path, where he's teaching you about right speech, right action, and right livelihood. He's going to show you how you can cause harm through your speech, through your actions, and through your livelihood. But if you don't cause harm and you make wise decisions, this is going to produce wholesome results coming back to you. So to eliminate one aspect of this fetter, you're going to need to clean up your moral conduct to a certain point where you're functioning through your speech, your actions, and your livelihood in such a way that you're not causing harm to others. And because of that, you're going to see more and more wholesome things coming back to you in your life. But when you're making unwise decisions where you're causing harm through your speech, your actions, or your livelihood, unwholesome results are going to be coming back to you. So the Buddha is going to show you this through the teachings, and then you don't believe it. You learn it, you reflect on it to independently verify, and you practice. And I'm going to show you how to do that tomorrow. So when you clean up your moral conduct to the level of the Eightfold Path, that's what will eliminate wrong behavior. What wrong observances are is if you thought that rites, rituals, ceremonies, and worship is going to improve the condition of your mind, this would be what the Buddha refers to as wrong observances, that the mind's not understanding what the actual problem is. The actual problem in the unenlightened mind is that it lacks wisdom. It has this unknowing of true reality, confusion or misunderstanding. And if someone's doing rites, rituals, ceremonies, and worship, thinking that this is going to benefit them, then they're not understanding what they truly need to do is cultivate wisdom and train the mind. Because there's no amount of water that I can sprinkle on you that's going to help you become wiser. There's no amount of strings that I can tie on your wrist that's going to help you become wiser and that's going to improve your life. In terms of eliminating your anger and your sadness and your frustration, it's not rites, rituals, ceremonies, and worship that's going to do that. It's through learning, reflecting, and practicing. That's what's going to do that. So if you thought that rites, rituals, ceremonies, and worship are going to lead to some beneficial aspect of life, then the mind is still having this wrong observances. Whether you choose to go to a church or a synagogue or a temple or a mosque or something like this and be with your family members that are doing these rites, rituals, and ceremonies and worship, that's up to you. That can be a nice social event to go out with your family as they're doing those kinds of things. But your mind needs to understand that these things don't lead to this improved condition of mind. And that's what you can ultimately get to as you train in these teachings, because you'll see the cause and effect, action and result. The cause of sprinkling water on you, okay, if I sprinkle water on you, what's the effect? You get wet. That's the effect, right? There's no wisdom that is coming from the water, right? The effect is that you get wet. That's what water produces, right? So you'll need to be able to see that rites, rituals, ceremonies, and worship isn't leading to your wisdom in an improved way of life. And that is something that the mind would need to eradicate through the journey to enlightenment. So there's all these different fetters, and I'm not going to go through all of them, but I just introduce students in this course to the first three. And then at different times, I teach them to you in more detail so that you can eradicate all of them, including the higher fetters. So I'll introduce you to conceit, because this one takes a long time to eliminate. It's going to take you multiple years to eliminate this one. This is part of the ego. If you've ever talked about the ego or heard about the ego, this is the arrogance, the pride, the boastfulness, the judging others, putting yourself above others or below others, feeling like you're superior or inferior to others. Conceit is going to plague you in your relationships. If you're putting yourself above people and talking down to people, you're not going to be able to have harmonious relationships and relate to all people in a nice way, in a respectful way. But also, if you're putting yourself below people, that means your mind's going to be shaken up when you're around certain people, and you're going to have difficulties having good relationships in those situations too. So this conceit is the arrogance, the pride, the boastfulness, the measuring, the comparing, the putting yourself above others and below others. And then at different times in the various programs that I teach you how to eradicate this from the mind. But anytime you see your mind wanting to put yourself above others or below others, eliminate that and look at yourself as being equal. I encourage you not to judge other people, and don't put yourself above or below or look down on people, because you would like to look at everybody as being equal. And this one takes a long time for the mind to often eliminate. And then number 10, what number 10 is, people usually refer to it as ignorance, but this is like a derogatory word, kind of a degrading and demeaning word. A Buddha doesn't speak this way. An enlightened being doesn't speak that way. But essentially the way you can think about this is the unknowing of true reality, or confusion or misunderstanding. That the mind is just misunderstanding, and it's confused about the true nature of reality. It's confused about these natural laws of existence. So what you're doing to eradicate ignorance is cultivating wisdom so that you can see true reality in the world. So there's various teachings that you would need in order to eradicate this ignorance. The way to eradicate ignorance isn't just through intellectual learning. There needs to be a certain amount of intellectual learning, but the way you eradicate ignorance is through your practice of the teachings. When you're practicing the teachings, that's when your mind has fully eradicated the ignorance, because you can know that it's unwise to lie or steal. You can know that intellectually, but somebody might still be out in the world stealing and lying and doing other unwise things. They're not practicing the teachings. So the mind hasn't implemented the intellectual learning into your day-to-day practice, because the mind is still polluted with this ignorance or this unknowing of true reality. So the way that you eradicate the ignorance is, yes, there needs to be intellectual learning. You need to reflect, independently verify, and then you need to practice in order to actually implement the teachings in your day-to-day life. So this is just a little bit of an introduction to the 10 fetters, and just understand that everything I teach is going to help you to eradicate these in one way or another. That as you're diving into the Eightfold Path and the meditation training and everything else, it's helping you to eradicate these. And as you get going in your practice, eventually you'll need to pivot and start focusing on these more directly. So do you guys have any questions on anything I've been sharing so far up to this point? Yes, Junko. You can keep the mic with you, by the way, because you guys might need it, and you can pass it around, and no need to keep putting it back.
Oh, thank you so much, David, for nice explaining. And my question is about doubt. So I encounter often the doubt. So, for example, for example, a lot of platform and SMS, and then it sounds like a scammer, like, and so he's doubtful. So okay, I pass him. So it's maybe putting aside the kind of daily doubt. So the doubt here refers about for getting enlightenment. So especially for the Buddha's words, right? Because I actually in the so in the daily life I encounter a lot of doubtful stuff.
Yeah, so this isn't referring to like just daily doubt, like doubting whether you turned off the stove or not, or doubting something your husband says or your wife says or something like this. That's not what this is referring to. This is referring to doubt about the Buddha, the teachings, the community, your teacher, or your own ability to get to enlightenment. The opposite of doubt would be confidence, that you have confidence in the Buddha, that you have confidence in his teachings, you have confidence in the community, you have confidence in your teacher, and you have confidence in your own ability to get to enlightenment. And that comes with time, that you need to gradually learn and practice the teachings to be able to get to that point. So this isn't just generalized doubt. This is doubt as it relates to the path to enlightenment.
You mentioned don't believe means just try to invest by myself. Then naturally the doubt would be disappear or
doubt will gradually be eliminated as your mind's improving more and more, because you'll get to a point where it's been 6 months, a year, 2 years, however long, and you'll have noticed a certain amount of progress. You won't be enlightened yet, but you'll notice a certain amount of progress. And you'll be like, oh my goodness, this is like the best thing I've ever learned. Like, oh my goodness, this is like the best thing since sliced bread is what we say, right? That you will have dabbled in other things in your life and try to like make your life better. But when you find the true teachings of the Buddha and you're actually making progress on the path to enlightenment, and you can see it because the condition of your mind's improving and the condition of your life is improving, you'll get to the point where you have no doubt whatsoever. And that's why it just takes some time for you to investigate the teachings. And that's why I encourage people to harness this into an inquisitive mind. Because I doubted the teachings of the Buddha when I came to this path. And that's why it's a pollution, because the vast majority of people do doubt the teachings. But now you can harness it and turn it into an inquisitive mind where you soak into the teachings and try to really uncover whether they're true or false or not. And then that's where you eliminate your doubt, because you'll see the progress to the condition of the mind in your life.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Yes, you're welcome. Okay, for all you guys online, you can ask questions through Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom, or you can raise your hand in Zoom and ask any questions that you like. Okay, so now that I've kind of introduced you to the 10 fetters, I'm going to share with you guys the 4 stages of enlightenment. That as you're eliminating these fetters, your mind's going to move through these 4 stages of enlightenment. We refer to them as stream enterer, once returner, non-returner, and arahant. An arahant is an enlightened being. They've eliminated all the 10 fetters. You're going to see that here in a moment. But these are the 4 stages of enlightenment. And then there's something called a Buddha, which I'm going to explain to you what a Buddha is. A Buddha is not a stage of enlightenment. They're a unique individual. A Buddha is an arahant. They are an enlightened being, but there are certain criteria that make a Buddha, which is very different than an enlightened being. So let me explain this to you so you understand it. To get to the first stage of enlightenment, you need to eliminate the first 3 fetters: personal existence view, doubt, and wrong behavior and observances. And having gotten to this first stage of enlightenment, you will see a significant reduction to the discontentedness in the mind. I teach a retreat in January that gives you everything you need in order to get to this first stage of enlightenment. Having got to that first stage of enlightenment, if you die in that stage of enlightenment, you will come back into the world no more than 7 times. You may have been a stream enterer in a past life, and maybe in this life you get to a stream entry as well, or you may go beyond, or maybe you've never been a stream enterer before. You don't have to get to stream entry, and you don't have to be reborn 7 times after that. It's just that once you get to stream entry, you will be reborn a maximum of 7 times. You could get to stream entry in this life and keep on going to enlightenment. You don't have to stop at stream entry. You don't have to stop at each one of these stages. But if you die in that first stage, you'll come back a maximum of 7 times. The reason why we call it stream entry is because just like when a log enters a stream, it will eventually get to the ocean. When you get to stream entry, you're going to get to enlightenment. It's only a matter of time, either in this life or some future life. You will never be reborn down into the lower realms again, like hell, animal realm, or afflicted spirits. This first stage of enlightenment, you will get to enlightenment, either in this life or some future life. And all of this talk about the cycle of rebirth that you're starting to hear me kind of reference here and there, when someone first starts on the path to enlightenment, I suggest that they set the cycle of rebirth to the side and really focus on the core central teachings. Because what's happened in the past is in the past. It doesn't matter anymore. What may or may not happen in the future, it's in the future. Right now, you're in the human state. Your mind's discontent. You need to eliminate it. You need to eradicate it. But this cycle of rebirth is 100% true. I can tell you that. But in order for you to know that, you're going to need to independently verify it, because even the cycle of rebirth can be independently verified. You might not know how to do that right now, but as you journey in your path to enlightenment and you get deeper into the teachings, you can learn how to independently verify the cycle of rebirth. You might have had a few indications that it's true already in your life, and you don't even realize it. If you've ever experienced deja vu, if you know what this is, deja vu is where you're doing something and it feels utterly familiar to you, and you feel like you've actually done this thing before, but you know it wasn't in this life. This is your residual memories from your previous life resurfacing. And usually when this happens, it happens for about 5 seconds, 10 seconds, and somebody kind of pushes it to the side. And they're like, I'm not going to even pay attention to that. You just keep on doing whatever you're doing. But this is your residual memories resurfacing to the mind. So there's these kinds of things and others that you can look at in a totality of looking at all these criteria. You can independently verify that the cycle of rebirth is true. But you don't need to do that from the very beginning of your journey to enlightenment. Instead, you focus on the core central teachings. And then 1.5 years, 2 years into your development, you might decide to focus on the cycle of rebirth. So in this course, I don't usually really talk about the cycle of rebirth very much, but just understand that it is true. And what the Buddha is teaching you is referring to that, because he's teaching you way that things truly are. He's not explaining to you the way the world should be. He's explaining to you the way the world is. And there is this cycle of rebirth that can be independently verified. So this first stage of enlightenment, if you die in that stage, you'll come back into the world a maximum of 7 times, but you won't be reborn into hell, the animal realm, or the afflicted spirit realm. And you will get to enlightenment, either in this life or some future life. If you get to the second stage of enlightenment, we refer to this as a once returner. You've already eliminated the first 3 fetters, but then you've kind of thinned out sensual desire and ill will. If you're noticing that you kind of have less interest in sex, maybe at one time you were more interested in sex and now maybe not so much, or maybe you're noticing that you're not as angry as you once were, maybe when you were in your 20s or maybe your teenage years, maybe you had more anger than you have now. You're starting to thin out your anger, your ill will. So that's what it means to thin out your sensual desire and ill will. It's not completely eliminated, but it's starting to be thinned out by the time somebody gets to the second stage of enlightenment. If you're noticing that you're less interested in sex and you have less anger, it doesn't mean that you're in the second stage of enlightenment, because there's other criteria that you need besides just what I'm describing here. But this is how you get to the second stage of enlightenment, is by eliminating the first 3 fetters and thinning out number 4 and 5. And if you die in the second stage of enlightenment, you will come back into the world one more time, and then you will get to enlightenment. That's why we call it a once returner, because you're going to return back to the world one more time. Then there's the third stage of enlightenment, which is referred to as a non-returner. When you get to this stage of enlightenment, you will not come back to the human world ever again. You will be reborn into the heavenly realm, and you will attain enlightenment from the heavenly realm. The ultimate goal of the teachings are not to be reborn into the heavenly realm. Those beings are still in the cycle of rebirth. It's not a permanent existence. No matter what you've been taught before, you'll be able to independently verify that nothing around you is permanent. And existing in the heavenly realm is not permanent. So once you get to the third stage of enlightenment, if you die in that stage, you will be reborn to the heavenly realm, attain enlightenment there, and then you'll escape the cycle of rebirth. And the way that you accomplish the third stage of enlightenment is eliminating the first 5 fetters. But then the ultimate goal that I would encourage you to set for yourself, the ultimate objective, is to get to the 4th stage of enlightenment. This is called Arahant. Arahant is where your mind is actually enlightened. You've eliminated all the 10 fetters. You're not experiencing any more discontentedness whatsoever. In all of these other stages, you're still experiencing some degree of discontentedness. It's gradually diminishing as you're moving through the stages, but it's the last stage of enlightenment as an arahant where your mind is actually enlightened because you've eliminated all the 10 fetters. Now, these 4 stages of enlightenment, it's nothing to brag about. You're not going to call up your mom and be like, hey, mom, aren't you so proud of me? I'm a stream enterer. Can you imagine that? Your son, your daughter's a stream enterer. Or it's not something you're going to put on your Facebook profile that you're a once returner or a non-returner or an arahant. You don't boast about these things. But this is for your personal development, your growth, so that you might talk about these things with your teacher, like in a private conversation. You might say, hey, teacher, I feel like I've eliminated the first 3 fetters, but I'm not really sure. Can you help me to figure this out? Right? This might be something that you talk about with your teacher, but you're not going to talk about it with people on Facebook, or you're not going to call mom and say, hey, aren't you so proud of me? I'm a once returner, I'm a non-returner. So these are for your own personal growth and your own personal development. So these are the 4 stages of enlightenment. Some people just refer to them as the first, second, third, and fourth stage of enlightenment. That might be an easy way for you to think about it, but we do have these names that you can use if you like. Then there's something called a Buddha. We refer to a Buddha as a fully, perfectly enlightened one, or a Buddha. A Buddha is an arahant. They've eliminated all the 10 fetters, but they've done so in a very unique way. They've done so without the help of any teachers or any guides, that people haven't taught them how to get to that enlightenmental state. They did it by themselves without the help of any teachers or any guides. Then, once they awake to enlightenment, they dedicate the rest of their life to sharing their independently discovered teachings with countless people during their life. And countless people get to enlightenment during that person's life. And then the third criteria of what makes a Buddha is that they preserve their teachings in such a way that countless more people can get to enlightenment after their death. So these are the first 3 criteria, the primary criteria of what makes a Buddha, is that they get to enlightenment by themselves without the help of any teachers or any guides. They then dedicate the rest of their life to sharing their independently discovered teachings with countless people, and countless people get to enlightenment. And then they preserve their teachings in such a way that countless more people get to enlightenment after their death. So you'll be able to get to enlightenment, and you'll be an arahant or an enlightened being, but you won't be a Buddha because you're going to need help. You're going to need guidance. You're not going to do what the Buddha did. A Buddha in a world is very rare. The Buddha himself shared this, that it's very rare for a Buddha to arise in the world. Now, some people will tell you that if you get to enlightenment, that you are a Buddha, but this isn't actually true. The Buddha didn't say that, but people nowadays with a certain amount of ego or arrogance might say that. So it's important to be able to distinguish, this is an enlightened being, someone who's gotten to enlightenment. They've eliminated all the 10 fetters with the help of teachers and guides. A Buddha has done the same thing. They've eliminated the 10 fetters, but they did it by themselves without the help of any teachers. And then they shared their teachings, dedicating their life to sharing those teachings. Countless people get to enlightenment, and then they preserve their teachings in such a way that countless more people get to enlightenment after their death. And the reason why they're able to get to enlightenment by themselves is because of this other criteria here, that a Buddha has a profound memory. They have a deep memory, very detailed. They can understand countless details about their current life and their previous lives as well. And they accumulate all this wisdom into their mind over countless lives that then comes together in their last life to be able to then get to enlightenment on their own without the help of any teachers or any guides. It's kind of like this. Your mind has a certain capacity. You have a certain hard drive space where you can remember things from your childhood, but you kind of have spotty memories. It's kind of like here and there. You kind of remember a few things here and there. In terms of the last 5 or 10 years, you probably have some pretty good recall about what's happened in the last 5 or 10 years. But when you think about your childhood, it's just kind of like spotty memories. And this is because you have a limited capacity hard drive. And when you get to a certain capacity in a hard drive on a computer, you need to delete old files in order to store new files. That's what you need to do in order to continue to go forward in life, is you're deleting old files in order to store new files because you have a limited capacity. And this is why you only have spotty memories about the past in your childhood, because you've had to delete old files in order to store new files. Well, a Buddha doesn't do this. A Buddha's mind, a person who's going to become a Buddha, they have an unlimited capacity. They can remember countless details about their current life and their past life as well. And they accumulate all this wisdom in order to now get to enlightenment in their last life without the help of any teachers or any guides. So a Buddha, or a person who's to become a Buddha, will have a deep, profound memory. And now they're able to use that wisdom to be able to get to enlightenment by themselves. A Buddha can quickly determine the condition of the mind of another person. And they don't do this in a judgmental way, but they do it as a way to help the individual. That one of the powers of a Buddha is that people don't know who a Buddha actually is. If everybody in the world knew who a Buddha was, that person's ability to use this to observe a student's mind and then help them with teachings would be rendered useless. Because if everybody knew who a Buddha was, people would probably be on their best behavior when they were around that person. And that individual wouldn't be able to see the certain qualities of the individual's mind and helping them get to purity and purify their mind. So by people not knowing who a Buddha is actually very helpful, because then they can observe the mind of their students, see the qualities of their mind, and then help them with teachings to be able to help them get to enlightenment. So a Buddha can quickly determine the condition of somebody else's mind, and then when that student needs help, they're able to then help them with teachings that would actually assist them in their journey to enlightenment. And then the last thing here that I'll talk about in terms of a quality that a Buddha will have is a Buddha will be a living, breathing, walking example of their teachings. They don't teach one thing and then practice something different. Whatever they teach, that's what they're practicing. You will see them as a living, breathing, walking example of their teachings. Because a Buddha is wise enough to share teachings in a class like this, but then they're also wise enough to know that their students aren't only learning in the class, but they're also learning through watching and observing them. So if a Buddha taught one thing in class, but did something different in day-to-day life, they're not practicing what they actually taught. And the students wouldn't be able to actually learn how to practice the teachings. But by a Buddha choosing to be a living, breathing, walking example of their teachings, their students are not only learning through their spoken words, but they're also learning through their actions. That a Buddha is going to be walking through the world as a living, breathing, walking example of their teachings so that people can learn through observing them in their day-to-day life. So this is some of the criteria that you'll see related to a Buddha and what a Buddha actually is. Any questions on any of this? Yes, ma'am.
I understand one of the criteria you just explained, saying Buddha got all the memories of past life. But compared to the life story of our Buddha 2,500 years ago, if he's got all the memories from past life, how come that when he was 29 years old and never left the palace, he didn't have any understanding of sickness or death or aging? Because I'm assuming he got all the wisdom from past life.
Yeah, he didn't understand at that time what it was that was causing people's minds to be discontent, right? He understood to a certain degree about sickness, aging, and death, but he didn't necessarily understand the disgruntledness and the irritation and the misery and the despair, because his mind was unenlightened. His mind was still polluted. But then when he was motivated to go on this journey to get to enlightenment and he removes the pollution out of the mind, that's when the qualities of the mind start to be refined. So a person who's going to become a Buddha, when they are unenlightened, they're not a Buddha yet. Their mind is still unenlightened, it's still polluted. So they lack wisdom, they lack understanding. They're still experiencing frustration, agitation, and annoyance. They still lack wisdom about certain aspects of the world. But then when they start training their mind and they start lifting out the pollution out of the mind, this is where it starts to perform more optimally. So in the unenlightened state, the individual who's to become a Buddha, they would have a certain amount of memory, but not as much as once they get to enlightenment. Once they get to enlightenment, a Buddha's mind is going to be deep memory, because now they're going to be recalling all the things that they experienced throughout their lives, and now they're going to be able to apply it and be able to get to enlightenment. But before that time, he was an unenlightened being with a deep memory, but he didn't have complete recall of all the things he had complete recall about once he was getting to enlightenment.
I see. He just wasn't able to reach all those memories before he come.
Exactly. It's like they're locked away in the mind, and the pollution is hindering him from being able to recall those. But then as he starts unlocking the mind, now all of that wisdom starts flowing into his mind, and he can apply it to be able to get to enlightenment.
I see. Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay. Oh, yes, Junko.
Okay. Sorry. My question is, Buddha said, so some people could return to the human being realm, so maximum 7 times. And for other people, so 1 time. So I'm not sure why or how come so Buddha could say the kind of number 7 times, 1 time.
Okay, so in order to get to this first stage of enlightenment, you would have had to eliminate a certain amount of pollution in your mind.
Yes.
Right? You've done this work to eliminate a certain amount of pollution, but there's still pollution in your mind. So you're going to need a maximum of 7 times to come back, to continue to do that work, and to continue to get more and more of the pollution out of your mind. If you get to the point where you're a once returner, you've eliminated a certain portion of pollution, more than stream entry, but still there's pollution in there. So you only need 1 more time to come back and actually do the work that you need in order to fully eradicate all the pollution from the mind. So it's about the amount or the quantity of pollution that's in your mind, about how many times you need to come back in order to fully eradicate that.
So if those people who can't eradicate those 10 fetters, then after 8 times, after 7 times, 8th times maybe they go to other realm.
As a stream enter, there's not going to be an 8th existence. It's impossible for a stream enter to experience an 8th existence. Up to this point, to where you're at today, I can assure you that you've had countless existences in the past. You don't necessarily have the recall of that, but for someone who's observed their past lives, they will know that they have had countless existences in the past, and you will know that everybody else in the world has had that too. You might not have the recall of that at this point in time, but as you lift out more and more pollution out of your mind, you might experience observing past lives and have that recall. So I know that you've had countless lives in the past. And now wherever you are, you're probably not a stream enter, once returner, non-returner, and you're definitely, not an arahant. But wherever you make your way to in this life, you might make your way all the way to arahantship. You don't know, right? Or you might make your way to stream entry or something else, or you might fall short of stream entry. You don't know. But whatever you accomplish in this life, you will then be reborn if you haven't gotten to enlightenment. But if you get to enlightenment, there won't be any rebirth anywhere in the world at all. You've escaped the cycle of rebirth. But you're going to need those multiple lives in order to do the work that you need to cultivate the wisdom about this world.
Okay, so the number Buddha decided the number.
Yeah, so a Buddha has seen their past lives.
Yeah.
So he recalled, and he was able to see his lives in hell, his lives in the animal realm, his lives in afflicted spirit, his lives in the human realm, and his lives in the heavenly realm. And there he could see what stages of enlightenment he was in, if at all, and then what it took for him to get to enlightenment in that last life. So he was able to discern exactly these numbers. You may or may not ever be able to independently verify these. I was able to verify these to a certain extent because other than this life that I'm in now, I saw 2 previous human lives, and I saw many, many, many countless animal lives. And I know in that first human life, I got to stream entry. In the second human life, I got to once returner, and then I know where I'm at now today. So I was able to verify this to that degree, but I didn't experience 7 human lives to be able to verify that. But I know with confidence that all the teachings of the Buddha lead exactly where he said they do. So I have complete confidence in the Buddha that if he said that it's a maximum of 7, then it's a maximum of 7, because I didn't experience 7 human lives. So I know that it was true from that perspective, but I didn't experience exactly 7. So I don't know from that perspective, but I know that it's not going to be more than 7.
Thanks so much. So to knowing the Buddhism is very deep stuff for me.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, the Buddha's teachings are very deep, but take your time, just take your time, gradually learn them.
I need time to know.
Yeah, it's going to take some time.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Hello? I have a question about the final slide that you showed about a Buddha. I'm not aware of any other Buddhas than the Buddha. So are there or have there been Buddhas other than the original Buddha?
Okay, so during the lifetime of the Buddha, he spoke, he's taught orally, and then after his life, they documented his teachings into the Pali Canon. And during his life, it's reported in the Pali Canon that he described Buddhas that lived prior to him. And there's also documentation in the Pali Canon that describe him saying that he is the only Buddha, that he is the discoverer, the declarer of the path to enlightenment, undeclared before him. So this is the only conflict that I've ever seen in the entire Pali Canon, that there's one place where it says that there was previous Buddhas, and there's another place where he's saying that he is the discoverer, the declarer, the originator of the path to enlightenment, undeclared before him. So if you ask me, I think that he was the only Buddha. Prior to him, there wasn't any Buddhas. And the reason why I say this is that in order to get to enlightenment, a Buddha needs to communicate a very deep amount of wisdom. And as you see, the teachings of the Buddha are very deep, very profound. The Buddha lived over 2,500 years ago. Prior to that, human beings were trying to figure out communication. 20,000 years ago, 10,000 years ago, we didn't have enough intellectual conversation to describe these kinds of teachings that I'm describing to you here. So I think that it was only 2,500 years ago that human communication had evolved enough that a Buddha could come into the world and explain these teachings to the level of detail that he's explaining it. Prior to that, we weren't able to communicate to that level. So whether there were Buddhas before him, even though it's an interesting topic, and I oftentimes talk about this with students, it's really irrelevant because he shared what it took to be able to get to enlightenment. But there are people that talk about other Buddhas before him. But you can see this conflict in the Pali Canon. During his life, he talks about a new Buddha that is going to arise in the world. This is a Maitreya Buddha that he's referred to. And this is the future Buddha. And this is an individual who's going to come back into the world and restore the teachings of the Buddha in such a way that countless people in the world can learn and practice and understand the teachings, and the entire world can get to enlightenment. So in my opinion, there was this one Buddha, the Buddha, Gotama Buddha, and then there's a future Buddha that the Buddha referred to that would be coming into the world to restore his teachings back into the world. And people usually refer to this as Maitreya Buddha, or some people just refer to him as the future Buddha or the next Buddha. Yes, sir. If you could get a mic, that way the people online will be able to hear you. Thank you.
Hi. So the 4 stages of enlightenment, when would one know that they've achieved 1, 2, 3, 4, if you could call it that way? Would it be the teacher, i.e. you, or would the individual know themselves when they're at a particular stage?
you will know yourself based on learning and developing. You'll learn more and more about these stages and how to figure out whether you're in one of these stages. So the retreat that I teach in January is everything that you need in order to get to the first stage of enlightenment. And then one of the talks that I give in that retreat is how to know that you've attained the first stage of enlightenment. So students will be able to learn all the various teachings. They will see the improvement to the condition of their mind. They will know these various fetters, and they will know when they're in one of these 4 stages of enlightenment. And they will need to learn from their teacher how to figure that out for themselves. But a teacher is not like anointing you or giving you a certificate or anything like that.
Just guiding you along the way, so you've got enough information whether you've hit that level, sort of thing.
Exactly. And then as you're achieving each of these 4 stages of enlightenment, I encourage students to never believe that you've attained any of these stages of enlightenment. Because let's just say that you think that you're an arahant, that you're actually enlightened. But let's just say you're not, right? Because the ego is in there, that arrogance, that pride, that conceit is in there all the way to the very end. And your mind is going to want to convince you that you're more enlightened than you really are. And maybe you believe that you're enlightened, right? Because the ego is in there trying to convince you that you're enlightened. If you think you're enlightened, you'll kind of be complacent. You won't pay attention to the things that are going on in your day-to-day life in the way if you didn't think that you were enlightened. So when people get to enlightenment, I encourage them to never think that you're enlightened. Just stay diligent and dedicated to constantly learning and growing. You'll get to a point where it's been 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, and you're not experiencing any more discontentedness. You'll know you're enlightened, but I don't encourage you to really truly convince your mind of that, because that way you can just continue to develop wisdom the rest of your life. Because there's wisdom about the teachings of the Buddha that you'll cultivate on the path to enlightenment, but then there's all kinds of other wisdom in the world too. And with your mind performing optimally, where you have focus and concentration and clarity and deep memory, you can do anything and everything you've ever been interested in doing. So if you've always wanted to fly a helicopter, but you never thought you had the intelligence and the ability to do it, by the time you get to enlightenment, you'll be able to go fly a helicopter. I mean, you won't have the knowledge to do it. You'll have to go learn. You'll have to go train how to do it. But your mind will be able to have concentration and focus to be able to go fly a helicopter. Or if you've always been interested in opening your own business, but you're always scared, you're always fearful, you weren't quite sure, you didn't have the confidence, by the time you get to enlightenment, you'll have complete confidence to go open your own business. So it's kind of like getting to enlightenment is the beginning of the rest of your life, because now you're going to live the rest of your life with this enlightened mind. But if you convince yourself that you're enlightened, you may not be, and then you open up your mind to be complacent.
Continuation of just going down the path
yes.
forever. There's no sort of, right, I've achieved that level. You might be there, but it doesn't matter because you just carry on going, basically.
Exactly. Don't ever think of it as a finish line. Think of it as a lifelong journey. And even when you're enlightened, you're just going to continue the journey, because it's actually quite fun, right? Like going on holiday, going on vacation, it's quite fun, right? So just keep the journey. You're going to always be practicing the teachings. On the way to enlightenment, there'll be struggles, there'll be difficulties, because you're having to upgrade your mind to this new operating system. But once you get up and running in this enlightened mind, everything's effortless. So you just continue to practice the teachings the rest of your life. You'll never stop meditating by the time you get to enlightenment. You'll just always be doing it. So it's not like you get to a finish line and you're like, I'm done. Okay, now what? Like running a marathon. It's not like that. It's like you just keep going and just keep going, keep growing, keep evolving. Mm-hmm. Okay, it looks like Rachel has a question here on Zoom. Let me see. Let me get my cursor to the right spot. There you go, Rachel.
I have 2 questions. The first is, which stage will you consider yourself are in at this life? I think you partly answered this question just now, but I'm not sure if I follow you well. The second is, did the Buddha say when the future Buddha will arrive, will come?
Okay, can you ask your first question again? I didn't have the volume turned up enough to hear you at the beginning.
The first question is, which stage will you consider yourself are in at this life?
Oh, okay. So an individual who's on the path to enlightenment, they don't discuss where they think they are with other people. An enlightened being doesn't go around and tell other people that they're enlightened, even though I understand your question. It's very kind and warm of you to ask this question. But an individual who is on the journey to enlightenment, they just do their own individual work, their own personal growth. It's very unwise to go out into the world and tell other people that you think you're enlightened, or you're in the first stage or second stage or third stage. You just do your own individual work. So I don't share with people whether I am enlightened, but I don't share with people that I'm not enlightened either. So I just let you know that it's something that you can figure out for yourself. The more that you learn the teachings, the more that you understand what I'm sharing with you, you might come to a decision yourself of where you think I am on the journey to enlightenment, but that's for you to decide. I'm not interested in telling people, where I am on this journey, but I can share with you that the teachings of the Buddha lead exactly where he said they do. And by the time you get to this enlightened mental state, your mind will be peaceful, calm, serene, content with joy, and all these other benefits that I share with you. I'm sharing these based on my own personal experiences, that I'm sharing with you based on the focus, the concentration, the clarity, the deep memory, all of these different benefits and advantages. I'm sharing with you based on personal experience, but I wouldn't share whether I am enlightened or not enlightened, because a person who's gotten to enlightenment, they will have eliminated their ego and their arrogance and their boastfulness and their pride. So as soon as somebody says, I am enlightened, you know that they're not enlightened, because an enlightened being is not going to go around and be boastful and arrogant. If somebody tells you like, hey, by the way, I'm enlightened. Okay. So what, would you like me to admire you, or what do you want? What do you want from me? Because if they want you to admire them, they're not enlightened, because they still want something. They still are craving. If your mind is peaceful, calm, serene, and content with joy, just go out in the world and be peaceful and go be joyful. Why do you need me to admire you just because you're enlightened? So enlightened beings, in my opinion, would be more interested in helping other people to understand what enlightenment is and be able to get to that mental state, rather than talking about their own attainment of enlightenment. So that's the first one. The second one, the Buddha did talk about a time frame for a new Buddha arising in the world. He talked about these 500-year cycles that the world would go through from the point of his death until the time that the new Buddha would arise. In these 500-year cycles, he described them, and then you can look over history and you can see that we've actually completed all of those 500-year cycles exactly the way he said it would happen. And the last cycle ended in 2017 of this, 7 years ago. So he described that there would be a new Buddha arising 2,500 years after his death, which was in the year 2017.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Okay, so I have some more here to share with you guys. In order to just kind of wrap up this topic about what is enlightenment. One of the ways that I teach, when I teach a topic about what something is, I also like to teach about what something isn't, because that way it'll help you to understand what something is by teaching you what something isn't. So this is how to know that your mind is not enlightened, okay? And that way it'll help you understand what enlightenment is. So if you're experiencing discontentedness, these are what's called conditioned feelings. This is conditional pleasant feelings, painful feelings, and feelings that are neither painful nor pleasant. What a conditioned feeling is it's based on some condition. So if you look outside and it's sunny and you get happy, I'm so excited, yay, it's sunny outside, that's a conditioned feeling. Or, yay, my mom is coming to visit today. Oh, I'm so excited, my mom's coming to visit. This is a conditioned feeling. Or, wow, look at my bank account. My bank account is this level. Wow, I'm so excited. This is called a conditioned feeling. And now, when that condition changes, your mind's going to end up in the painful feelings. Mom's not coming to see me. Oh, I'm so frustrated now. I'm so irritated. Or my bank account balance has gone down. Oh, I'm so frustrated. Or it's not sunny anymore, it's raining. Oh, you're so irritated or annoyed. So by the time you get to enlightenment, you're not experiencing conditional feelings, meaning basing your inner feelings on some condition. Your mind will be happy. You will be joyful, but it'll be unconditioned happiness. It won't be conditional happiness. So if you're experiencing conditional feelings, then your mind is not yet enlightened. And this is a clear indication for you that you're not yet enlightened. And in here, this is the one I was just talking about, Rachel. Number 2 here is if you have a craving desire for others to know that you are enlightened, that means their arrogance and pride and boastfulness still in the mind. Therefore, you know that you're not enlightened. You can't be enlightened if you're going around telling other people that you're enlightened. I've never met anybody who has told me that they're enlightened that was actually enlightened. Because usually when somebody tells me they're enlightened, I'll usually say, no, you're not enlightened. And they'll get angry and they'll get frustrated as soon as I say that. I'll say, nah, you're not enlightened. You can't be enlightened. And they'll get angry and they'll get frustrated, right? There you go. You know that they're not enlightened, but they think they are, right? So if you hear somebody say that they are enlightened, you can be sure that they're not enlightened. So if you're going around telling people that you're enlightened, then you know that you're not enlightened. So it's just something you'll keep to yourself, right? And then the other thing is that if you have complacency, if you notice that your mind is dull or lethargic, or there's laziness in the mind, you're lacking motivation, initiative, a willingness to do something, then you know that you're not enlightened. Because an enlightened being doesn't run around and chase things around in the world, but they're also not dull and lethargic and lazy. Their mind is in the middle. They're actively working towards certain goals and objectives in their life. They don't get tired. They don't get exhausted. An enlightened being doesn't experience that. They do need to sleep. They get sleepy where they need to sleep, but they don't get exhausted and they don't get tired. Because when you're chasing things around the world with craving, desire, attachment, if you get what you want, you'll get happy and excited. You'll get pleasant feelings. But when you don't get what you want, you'll get sad and angry and frustrated. You'll feel exhausted going around the world because in some cases you get what you want, in other cases you don't get what you want. And this is very exhausting and tiring on the mind and on the body too. So if you ever come home from work and you felt like you have, bricks on your shoulders, or you have bricks on your feet, this is because you're dragging around that burden of craving, desire, attachment. But by the time you get to enlightenment, your mind is uplifted. It's bright, it's radiant, that you don't experience exhaustion and tiredness anymore. This is why enlightened beings tend to sleep very little comparative to when they were unenlightened, that you can sleep very little. You don't need to sleep very much because your mind doesn't get exhausted. And therefore, you can be very beneficial and very productive in the world, accomplishing many things in the world, because it's almost like you get extra time in your day, that you're not just awake and kind of doing things for 8 hours or 12 hours, that you actually have all this extra time because you're not being angry, you're not being frustrated, you're not being irritated, and you're not tired, you're not exhausted because you're not chasing your cravings around any longer. So by the time you get to enlightenment, you won't have this complacency or this dullness or this lethargic condition or this exhaustion in the mind. Okay? And sometimes I teach the 7 factors of enlightenment here, but I'd like to just kind of check in with you guys. I think this might be enough for you guys. Or would you guys like to learn the 7 factors of enlightenment? We have some extra time before lunch, or we could just take a lunch here. Let's see, it's 11:45. Are you guys interested in learning more, or should we go to lunch?
Will you start up and show us that 7 factors when we come back?
If you would like to learn the 7 factors of enlightenment, I'll teach now, but after lunch, I'm going to teach you Buddhist chanting. You would like to learn them now? Yeah, I can teach it to you in less than 15 minutes probably. So the 7 factors of enlightenment, it's not to determine whether you are enlightened or you aren't enlightened. What they are is they're a tool to fine-tune the mind and help you to fine-tune the mind. If you think about becoming enlightened as like creating a sculpture, if you have a big hunk of wood, like a log, like a raw piece of wood, when you first get this raw piece of wood and you're trying to make this intricate sculpture, you're going to probably take a hatchet and you're probably going to start hacking away, or like an axe. You're going to start hacking away a bunch of big chunks of wood at the very beginning because you're trying to get this hunk of raw wood down to something that you can work with, something that's manageable. But then eventually, as you kind of get this sculpture going, you're going to need to go in with a fine tool like an X-Acto knife, or something like a razor blade. If you're making a sculpture of a person, you're going to need to put like the wrinkles in the eyes or on the face, and you might use this kind of fine-tuning tool, this X-Acto knife or this razor blade, to kind of put those wrinkles on the skin. Well, The path to enlightenment is the same way. You're essentially sculpting this wonderful human being to become this better and better human being. And initially, you're chopping off big chunks of wood. And that's what we're going to start doing tomorrow when I'm teaching you the Eightfold Path. You're going to be learning about these big chunks of wood to chuck off. But then eventually, as your mind's starting to come more and more to the middle, you're going to need a finer tool to fine tune the mind. And the 7 factors of enlightenment are that fine tool. The 7 factors of enlightenment are something to bring the mind to the middle. And the Buddha teaches these 7 factors because you're going to need them at different times. Here's what the 7 factors of enlightenment are. The first factor of enlightenment is called mindfulness. This is where you have awareness of your mind. You're going to learn about this tomorrow, where you need to have awareness of what's going on in the mind. Well, when you notice that the mind is sluggish or dull or lethargic, you're going to then need to practice the enlightenment factors of investigation, of energy, and joy. That's what uplifts it out of the sluggish, the dull condition and brings it to the middle. And then when you notice your mind is excited or elated, you're going to need to practice the enlightenment factors of tranquility, concentration, and equanimity. That's what brings the mind down to the middle, out of that excited state. So your mindfulness is there all the time. You should be practicing awareness of mind at all times, where you're aware of the mind. And wherever you notice that your mind's dull, lethargic, and sluggish or complacent, you're lacking a willingness to do something, you practice the enlightenment factor of investigation. This is the exact opposite of what the mind's going to want to do. The mind's going to want to be dull and lethargic and sit around on the couch and do nothing. But you would like to pick up that book. You would like to go meditate. You would like to come to the temple. You would like to reach out to your teacher and ask some questions, right? You would like to investigate the teachings. As you're investigating the teachings, you're going to notice this energy arising, this willingness to do something, this initiative, this motivation, this enthusiasm. And then you're going to notice this joy coming into the mind, which is going to uplift the mind out of that dull, complacent state, that sluggish state. But then when you notice your mind is excited and overactive, you need to bring in the tranquility, the calmness, right? The peacefulness, the stability, the steadiness. Then you're going to need to practice the concentration, which is the focus, the clarity, focusing on a single object. Then you're going to need to bring in the equanimity, the calmness, the composure, the evenness of temper. And you apply the effort to bring the mind out of that excited state down into the middle. And that's how you fine-tune the mind. So this is something that you practice throughout your journey to enlightenment. Wherever you see the mind sluggish, you can lift it up with investigation, energy, and joy. And wherever you see the mind overactive and excited, you can calm it down with tranquility, concentration, and equanimity. So this is what's called the 7 factors of enlightenment. These are tools to fine-tune your mind whenever you see your mind is either sluggish or excited. It brings it to the middle. Any questions on this one? Okay, I'm not seeing any questions anywhere. So this afternoon, when we come back from lunch, I'm going to teach you guys Buddhist chanting. I'm going to explain to you why we do Buddhist chanting, the purpose of it, the history of it, and then I'm going to teach you how to actually do it to be able to build up your practice so that when you're actually doing meditation, if you would like to do some chanting, you can do chanting. You don't need to actually chant in order to get to enlightenment, but I'll explain to you what it is and why people do it and show you how to benefit from it. And then if you'd like to practice it, I'm going to be teaching you how to actually do the chanting, and then we're going to do a meditation session before we leave for the day. So right now is 10 minutes to 12. So why don't we just still call that 1:30 to come back for lunch, to give you an hour and 40 minutes for lunch. So enjoy your lunch, and I'll see you guys after lunch for the Buddhist chanting. So thank you all for your questions, and enjoy your lunch. Okay? Thank you again for watching. Enjoy your meditation. Look forward to seeing you online and answering any questions that you might have. Thank you so much.